Rain
talk.
So, Dougo,
Yo, Hugh.
so you're in the CaveClan, and a long time ago, people used to meet up in the city. I remember a restaurant called Crossways. What are your memories of Crossways? Any thoughts?
Well, I think it was Wes that, maybe you, but definitely Wes that, being a vegetarian, that got us into it. I remember, there was some sort of interesting people in there. There was the guy who he wasn't actually a Hare Krishna, but he was a grumpy dude who used to tell people he was a manager of a restaurant. We overheard him saying that once on a train. He used to hate us. I think because I don't know, we did things like let chickens go in there, and and we ate heaps. We used to eat. They used to call us the greedy ones. Some of the Hare Krishna guys would give you like tiny little servings, and we sort of try to avoid them.
It's all you can eat, right?
Yeah, it's all you can eat. It used to be like, and it was stuff. It was like $2.50 with a concession card. I think it was $4 normal. Yeah, and you were served by Hare Krishnas. Yeah, there was another one. What did Wes used to call him? There used to be a term we use called plate swappers. So you're paying $2.50 for, but basically you're paying nothing. But $2.50, which is probably the equivalent today, is like $7 or something. And you'd get these people, we call them plate swappers, and they're always sort of, your dirty hippie type, matted up dreadlocks, no shoes on, dirty feet. And they would come in, and one of them would buy a $2.50 plate of Hari Gerbils, as we called them. And they'd eat their food, and then they'd give, because you just take your plate back to get another serving, and then they'd swap their plate around. And that like four of them would eat off one plate, or maybe four of them would have two plates. But they were so plate swappers. So plate swappers, and then that became a term. Whenever you come across scumbags, or tight, like those over the top scumbags, plate swappers. Plate swappers was quite an insult back in the day. You dirty plate swapper.
Yeah, right. I like the dessert there. They had this dessert.
I like the pineapple custard one. That was awesome.
Yeah.
I'll post a link. We recently, for Woody's 50th, we went back to Hari's just in 2023.
Well, I was going to ask, it was open for a long time, but did it close and then reopen? What's the story?
Yeah, it closed and went somewhere. Like it was at 123 Swanston Street in Melbourne. And then it went to, I think it might have been even in the business district. I never went to that one. Then COVID happened, and I think it shut down altogether. And then it opened again back in Swanston Street, but a different street number. I've only been there once. That's where we went last year, and we had a bit of an adventure. I'll post a link to the end of it. But Woody ended up eating too much Haris. Yeah, we went on an adventure through the city trying to find him because he wandered off trying to find somewhere to vomit.
Sorry. Who are you talking about? Woody?
Woody, one of the founding members of the CaveClan.
Well, speaking of Woody, I used to always see this graffiti around the city that used to say Woody roots cats. So I was just wondering if there's any relationship between that graffiti and that founding father, Woody.
Well, actually, there is.
Please tell the story.
Well, it actually all started when we used to have this annual camping trip at Murchison, where all CaveClan people would go after Boxing Day for a few days, and I think you came along to a few.
Yeah.
And we'd let our hair down and relax after a hard year of draining.
Yeah.
And anyway, Woody was supposed to come, and he didn't come because there was some international socialist gathering. So he was putting the commos ahead of the CaveClan. So we're sitting around a campfire. I used to sometimes record things with on a cassette, like just audio.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I was recording, and we're basically giving Woody shit. We're all pissed, and it was having a laugh. I said something like, you're sitting at home while we're all having a good time, and then Sloth just says quietly in the background, he's probably rooting Max, and Max was his cat. I sort of didn't hear it. We just kept going. And a couple of minutes later, I said, what did you say, Sloth? Did you say he's at home rooting Max? And Sloth laughed. And that was the start of it. Then for the next, I don't know, 10 years. He still cops it to this day, like 30 years later. Yeah, so sometimes when we'd be going out to pubs around, Abbotsford, Fitzroy, Clifton Hill, even up to East Melbourne, and if we for some reason had a can of paint with us, yeah, we tended to write Woody Roots Cats, like people climb up on railway bridges, and yeah, so for a while it was for a few years there it was a thing. We got into a car once with this reporter and his offsider, and we were going to do an interview, a CaveClan interview in a drain or something. And I said to the guys, "Oh, this is Sloth, this is so and so, this is Woody." And the passenger turns around and goes, "Oh, you Woody?" And he goes, "Lucky I didn't bring my cat." So it became, he got quite well known as being a cat rooter. And the stickers, we made up stickers, and when we go up to Sydney, because he moved up to Sydney, and when we go up to Sydney, we put stickers up in his street and that, Woody Roots Cats. And I guess nowadays you'd call it bullying.
Oh yeah, okay. Do you remember Tripper?
Not by that name.
He's like a guy, he'd go to Crossways and you'd see him around. He was like on a permanent acid trip. I used to walk in slow motion.
You got to remember, trippers and people like that, it was like a soup kitchen almost. Like, so you had a lot of
students, scumbags.
And just crazy people. There used to be that guy that used to walk around with his pants up over his gut, and he had a rope holding him up. I don't know if he went to Harry's, but what do we call him? The walker or something. He's the one that used to take the walk in big stride.
Do you remember the guy who used to be out the front of Flinders St Station in a wheelchair playing the bagpipes every day?
Yeah. He actually, and this is a fact, he didn't need the wheelchair. He needed it originally. He'd hurt his leg or something. And he just found that in the end, he got heaps more tips when he was sitting in the wheelchair. Because I used to see him at the end of the day a couple of times where he'd hop out of his wheelchair and pick up his money. And we got talking to him once, and he said, no, originally I had a stuffed knee and I couldn't stand there playing the bagpipes all day. And then when my knee got better, I just started playing. But he goes, I was only getting half the tips. So, and plus it was just more comfortable having a seat, so yeah. So.
Yeah, because he was a busker.
Yes, he was a busker. He was quite good, actually, for as much as you can listen to the bagpipes anyway.
Tell me, do you remember this guy in Crossways? So he used to always be there, and he had a mental problem. And in the end, he ended up becoming a Hare Krishna. Do you remember that guy?
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Which was a common thing, that people would go through, that process of, they would, because what you used to do is if you didn't have any money, you would volunteer, you'd wash dishes and that.
Yeah.
Eventually you'd see them have the yellow bird shit on their forehead and the shaved head, and, wearing the bed sheets. Apologies to any Hare Krishnas listening. Actually, we went to Adelaide Hare Krishnas once, and it was a CaveClan thing. And we were sort of ordering our food, and then suddenly this Hare Krishna guy comes up full, sheets and shaved head and yellow stuff on the forehead. And then he just goes, "Oh, hi, Dougo." And I looked up at him, and it was actually an Adelaide CaveClan guy that had called, I've forgotten his name at the minute. Yeah, he'd actually become a full, Hare Krishna. He was a nice guy, actually.
But if you went there by yourself, it's often in the early days, some Hare Krishna would come and sit down with you and try and tell you the time and get you to convert. Did that ever happen to you?
It didn't, but I think you guys went. We just went like maybe most Fridays. But I think, well, I don't know, but I know Wes, and you and Wes used to be quite, close. I know Wes used to go a lot more days, like that, and they also had the Sunday in South Melbourne. You could go to a free meal. I think that was more where they try and get you. Drain talk.
Drain footwear. What do you reckon is the best drain footwear? I guess sometimes you'd have newbies exposed. Did you ever get people rocking up in gumboots or anything like that?
Well,
what do you think about gumboots in the drain?
Look, this is one thing where I'm different to most drain explorers, and even on a worldwide scale. If I had to wear gumboots or if I had to wear waders like they do in a lot of parts of the world, I just wouldn't do drains. Like I only do them because I can walk in in my sneakers, and I don't
So
have to
you
wade through shit. I mean, sometimes we do, but that's like, oh, you know you're going to do it. But just not 90% of what we do, we just walk in. I always had a social goal. Like I wanted it to be more of a social thing. So yeah, if I did have to wear gum boots, I wouldn't do it. So no, I'm not. Plus, I've got size 15 feet, so to get size 15 gum boots, I'd look like a bit of a freak anyway.
So you reckon sneakers are the go?
Sneakers are the go. I've actually been tidying up my garage the last couple of weeks, and I found like 3 pairs of shoes.
Did you
that are
find any
basic.
KT26 Dunlops? I used
No.
to think were the best drain shoe.
My feet were too big. Gilligan loves them and Note loves them, but because of the size of my feet. But I found a few pairs, and they're basically I've just put them aside for drain shoes. So next time I go draining, I'll probably just wear them and throw them away. They're that old, but they're old Converse.
So when you have a newbies expo,
Mm.
did you give people any information as to what they should bring to a newbies expo? Of course, you tell them to bring a torch,
Yeah.
but did you give them any advice on their footwear?
No, well, we just said wear, like your feet are probably going to get wet, so don't wear your $400 whatevers, but make sure they got grip. And that was the main thing. We said, look, you're probably going to get some web. Sometimes when we didn't emphasize the torch part of it, people literally would come along, and as we were going in the tunnel, they wouldn't have a torch, and they'd go, oh, we didn't realize it was going to be dark. So some people come along with no idea, like, even though it's common sense if you're going to be going in drones to be in the dark. But no, generally we just said wear stuff with grip, sturdy, like don't wear thongs.
Well, hang on, don't wear thongs, but you often wear thongs in the drain or bare feet.
But I'm a professional.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's through laziness. The honest answer is I don't want to have wet socks and wet shoes and stinking out my car.
You were speaking about people rocking up with no torch, but I always see you, and you just always have some shitty little torch. I thought you'd have some, big fantastic torch, being a drain person, but you always just seem to have some crappy little $2 torch.
A lot of people think like, oh, OG, and all this sort of shit. Like I'm so not a tech savvy. Like for decades, not years, for decades, probably for 30 years, my idea was, we're going in a drain, go into the reject shop, get a $5 torch with batteries and just throw it in the bin at the end of the day. Actually, I got an Olight torch, which is awesome. And after having shitty $5 torches for 30 years, having an Olight was.
Well, why don't you have something you can put on your head or something?
Well, I do now. I've had a headlamp for the last few years. Well, since I've been videoing these walkthroughs, I've had a headlamp. And I have actually for the last 5 years, I've had decent torches. But you're referring to historically, I had cheap plastic shit.
People in the CaveClan are partial to having a barbecue now and again. So my question for you is, I've always thought that a manhole cover would make a good barbecue plate. It'd fit perfectly on a 44-gallon drum. What are your thoughts on that, and where can I get a manhole cover?
Well, actually, there's a guy who took a very prominent manhole that we used to use to get into Great Stairway and turned it into a coffee table. And I think he basically ended up getting, I don't know if he got kicked out or if he left, he jumped before he was pushed. I would say it's probably a good idea, maybe when they replace a drain and they rip it up, but I wouldn't take one out of the ground, obviously, because the next person walking their dog along there is probably going to fall in. Common sense stuff, but
walking their dog. So you've had a dog or two over the years. Do you ever walk your dog down a drain? I used to walk my dog down a drain, because if I ever got picked up by the cops, I just said, oh, my dog ran down the drain. I had to go and get it. Do you ever walk your dog down the drain?
I did. I used to take Monty in a few drains, but I took my previous black lab, Chloe, or Death Ray Eyes, is what used to be her drain name. I took her in quite a few drains. She liked it. My latest dog, which is a black lab, also Lottie, not the most intelligent dog. It would probably struggle.
Did you notice that dogs love drain water?
Well, Labradors do, because they're water dogs.
Drinking it.
Oh, okay. Well, when we went to Adelaide recently, there was a guy, Buff and Bloke. Bloke's the owner, I guess you call him, and Buff is the dog. And Buff would she'd have a drink every now and again, but I guess if they need a drink, there's water there, they're going to drink it. Night Stalker drank water out of the city loop once when we were walking through the city loop, and there was a puddle of water, and he was thirsty. He drank it out of the city loop.
Yeah, Christ, that's desperate. This word Urbex, where did it come from?
It was made up by a guy called Ninjalicious in Canada. He has a website, or he had a website because he's no longer alive, but it still exists, but it's just sort of frozen in time. But it's called infiltration.com, I think. And he came up with the term. He was sort of he was the first non-Australian CaveClan member. He eventually got cancer and died. He came up with the term urban exploration, and then silage and shortened it to Urbex. Brain talk.
Brain talk.
Yeah.
Well, speaking about CaveClan members, how many CaveClan members are there?
For the last 8 years, I haven't really had a lot to do with like Sid Clan or Melbourne Clan. I just sort of do stuff with the old school guys, and there's quite a few of us, like maybe 30 of us. Because there's so many different tiers. There's like proper CaveClan members, and there's ones that come along to major things, and there's some that just come along to parties, and look, there'd be hundreds, but if you said how many hardcore active members are there in CaveClan, there might only be 30 in Australia. That 30 or 40.
I guess with Urbex or whatever it's called these days, when you go exploring, you're meant to leave it untouched and not take things from abandoned buildings and stuff like that. That's the way it is now, correct?
Yeah, although it doesn't always happen, but yeah.
So that's kind of like the unwritten rule now, but I guess in the early days there were no unwritten rules. So my question is, back in the day, did you score any good things, or did you see something and you didn't take it and you wish you had of, and maybe later on someone else took it?
So I guess I didn't drive. I was a late driver. I didn't drive until I was 30. So I very rarely had a car, if I wanted to get stuff. I was always on trains and buses. They're probably the only thing I remember of the Melbourne Power Station. That had heaps of stuff in it. There's a few things there that I thought, that'd be good, but I never got it. I really can't remember. I might have got like bits and pieces. The line is, take photographs, leave only footprint.
In Melbourne, do you reckon there are any undiscovered drains or Urbex locations?
With drains, I've been saying this for years. Obviously there'll be, as Melbourne spreads out, there's going to be ones in the new housing estates, and they're most likely going to be 6 or 7 foot.
Do you think there's any old drains that haven't been discovered yet?
Sorry, I burped. That's why I stopped talking then. But no, well, the ones in the housing estates is going to be concrete pipes, and they're going to have lots of grilled rooms.
I'm talking about old drains.
Yeah. And then, but the only place I think you'll find old drains are in regional Victoria. Or do you remember that drain we did near Burnley, you and I? And it was like a little concrete pipe. It was pretty crap, but we went up it, and I think for some reason you said you thought there might be asbestos in it. I can't remember why. Maybe because there was asbestos in Burnley Abattoir was like super popular with graffitiists. But anyway, we went up this little concrete pipe, and then we got up to this red brick section, and you could stand up. It was like 9 foot high, and it was at a split. I'm 99% sure back in the day it would have been a creek, and this red brick section was just a bridge under one of the roads. But it was pretty cool finding that. So there's probably stuff like that. If you want to crawl up a concrete pipe, you might.
Does that have a name, that one?
It does. Recently, it got added to the list, but I can't really remember what it's called now.
Speaking of drains, do you think that the Maze and the Glass Creek drain are connected by pipe?
Not really. I mean,
Well, I sent you some photos recently. I think they are.
Yeah.
You don't agree? Fair enough.
Well, they tend not to. Look, and lots of people hassle me about, does Bangers join up with God? Because Bangers is a diversion to take, was built to take pressure off God, God being a drain, not the entity. I tend to think they don't. It could, but like when they divert drains, like people have been trying to dig through from Anzac into Como Falls, but even if they did get through to it, like they found where the old tunnel ends, when where they diverted Como Falls off, and they just try and dig through. Well, if they dig through, they're just going to get to the outside of a concrete pipe, And people are really into that in recent years. There's people really into that. People that are more dedicated to me, and they haven't found that those drains join. So maybe people listening to this, it'll get people, and maybe in 6 months they'll find a way through, and you'll be right. But so I'm not saying it's not right. I just don't know. But I don't.
Okay.
And I've been up both those drains really fast. So one goes to Camberwell Junction, one goes to Ryburn Avenue.
Is the Ryburn Avenue in the park?
Yeah. There's a retaining basin there, and they're actually in the middle of fixing it up.
So that guy who was digging out those apparent army bunkers in Northcote, is that just a load of rubbish? Were they army bunkers? Was that guy just a loony or what?
Look, he was in some kind of tunnel, but they were, I don't know what it was. It looked like it was just a mine. I went in the tunnels with him, and I don't want to speak down about the guy.
Okay.
I think he was going after everything, and he was so passionate. In the end, he found nothing, so that probably says a lot.
Back in the day, there was no cell phones and no internet, and people used to leave messages to meet up with people. And you had to be punctual. If you weren't there, you might wait around for half an hour, and then you'd say, "Fuck this, I'm out of there." However, these days, everyone's got smartphones, and so it's not really about drains, this question, but like if you're going to be 10 minutes late, everyone's like, "Well, I'll send a message and say, oh, I'm running late. I'm running 15 minutes late," or rah rah rah. So my question is, do you think people just are less punctual these days because they think they can get away with it because they've got a smartphone and they can just say, "Oh, I'm going to be 10 minutes late," whereas back in the days, you couldn't be late. You had to show up on time.
Yeah, I reckon that you're pretty spot on. There's a thing called clan time, which is, so if someone says we'll meet at 11, it means we'll meet at 11:30. I hate that.
Yeah, so do I. That didn't used to be the case.
No, well, like as you said, it couldn't be, because if you rocked up 30 minutes late, everyone would be gone.
Yeah, but I guess you're guilty of it yourself.
Yeah. But the thing is, I'm guilty of it like 5 out of 100 times, whereas other people are guilty 95 out of 100 times. Usually I have a genuine excuse. I'm very anal about, as other people will tell you, I always have all right, we'll meet at this time, and then we'll go up there, and hopefully we'll get out at this time, and then we'll get to the next one at this time, because I've normally got to get home, and I'm always paranoid about spending too long away from the family.
Well, speaking about the family, you're married and you've got a family. Doesn't your missus get on your back about going in drains and spending all your time making magazines and stuff like that?
I only work 3 days a week, so I try and do a lot of it on those days off when they're not around. I've actually stopped doing the zine. But with the videos that I'm editing, my wife will often watch stuff with my older daughter, like on Netflix or something. So I'll just come and edit a video then. So I manage the time like that. And as far as going in drains, I don't actually do it that often. It probably just seems like I do a lot more than I do because I put the videos. I never go to Melbourne just to do drains. I go for another reason, then I'll just pop in and I'll put an hour or two aside and go shoot a video. So yeah, I'm very conscientious about that side of it, that I don't become a silogen or whatever who just lives for drains.
Drain talk.
Drain talk.